Agenda items. The first thing, this isn't quite starting off the way I anticipated, but everyone say hello to the black box up there that says Leanne Ballard. Leanne is our new clerk. The executive committee interviewed over the summer, and we selected Leanne. Leanne is a vice president of a mortgage company. She also has about 4 years of post-high school mathematical studies. We think she's going to be a great help to the Finance Committee. Under normal circumstances, she would be sitting in the chair over in the corner, running the Zoom and taking the minutes. Unfortunately, Leanne has got the flu. So Al has stepped in to get the Zoom running for the capital meeting for this meeting, for which I thank you. And Leanne is appearing remotely and taking the minutes, so hopefully at our next meeting, everyone will have a chance to say hello to her. I'm going to move a few items for Zach's benefit to later on, the prior minutes, the subcommittee assignments, subcommittee reports. We're going to push those off to later. So let me get to next the issue of Finance Committee guidelines for this year. I've taken into consideration comments I've gotten from people on the committee as well as people outside of this room. I'm trying to accommodate everybody as best I can. I think for now, I would ask that people ask to be recognized rather than just sort of having free-flowing conversation, as much as I would prefer the latter. Just keep in mind that I have to look to my left, to my right, up on Zoom. Someone may be sitting in front of me, plus an agenda. So in order to just maintain some order, I would ask that people just give me a nudge if they'd ask to be recognized. Secondly, I'd ask that people just try to refrain from any comments about personalities or individuals. Be professional. Let's observe decorum. With respect to spending generally, I'd like to say that Al has frequently said in the past that he considers Proposition 2.5 overrides and debt exclusions to be profanity. I just want to say as a general proposition, I fully support that view. It's my view that those items are really the only guardrails we have on spending as a municipality. And if you remove those guardrails, I'm not really sure what the guardrails are. So I think we should start with that focus and try to look at ways to conserve spending and balance our budget within our means. I don't prefer emergencies. I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to evaluate any supporting documentation and information before they have an opportunity or required to cast a vote. With respect to emergencies, I had a friend who was a bankruptcy trustee who was appointed to an office building in Manchester, New Hampshire. And right after he was appointed, the building burned, and it was at a 45-degree angle hanging over the main street of Manchester, New Hampshire. I would call that an emergency. I don't want to have to deal with artificial emergencies, and I think that everyone should make sure they have an adequate opportunity to get the information that they need. I'm also going to try to do some things that will be educational to make sure that people understand things that maybe we haven't had a chance to talk about in the past. This summer, we went through investments in some detail. Everyone was invited to that. I think the people who were there thought that that was a very useful
It was excellent.
exercise.
Excellent. Yep. Chris Pillar was one of
Yes, Chris
Chris
Pillar
Pillar.
joined us, and Zach, and we're going to do some more of those things. Tonight, in the next order of business, I'm going to be talking about long-term budget trends, and then we're going to talk about the dual tax rate. So that's, I've got a few other thoughts, but we'll save it for the next meeting. So those are my initial observations. Now, I'd like to go to long-term budget trends, which is...
You want to approve the minutes for?
No, that's one of the items that, I don't know if you're here. We're pushing a few items back.
Okay, I heard you. I was here,
Zach's
yeah.
benefit.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so several pages in, you will find what was an Excel sheet that is just a little over 2 pages. This data going all the way across. And I thank Paul Avenza for helping me put this together. I think this is a useful exercise for people to just take their breath and look at this from a 5,000-foot standpoint, and particularly since, as I understand it, we don't have any articles for consideration tonight. So what we did was we took a few dozen departments and we went back to 2019. So we have 6 years of data. And on the far right-hand side, what you have is the average increase in that department budget over that 6-year period. Now, a few primary takeaways. If you go to the middle of the second page, operating budget expenses as a whole, you see the bold, you see that the average increase has been 6.06%. And then if you go several lines down, the real estate tax levy, that's 4.05%. So that is one of the structural issues that everyone needs to be cognizant of, is that general budget spending is growing at a faster rate than the tax base. And so that's something we need to keep closely in mind. Now, so why did we have a balanced budget over these years? And why do we have excess levy capacity? Well, underneath the tax levy, you see the state aid cherry sheet has been going up at an average rate of 11%. So to the extent you want to attribute that to the school department, you would see that that reduces the net cost of the school department, which otherwise has a top-line figure of 7.38%. The local receipts are constant with the expenditures. You'll see the capital line item about 2/3 of the way down on page 2 has been going up on average 11%. It's a relatively small percentage of the budget, but it grows greater than the operating expense budget as a whole. There's also assessments. Those are state assessments, I guess, Paul. Those are going up more than I'd like them to be, 17%. It's $4 million. So I just thought that it would be helpful for people to see this, to just take a look at what are the growth areas, what are the areas we need to keep our eyes on, and to understand the potential risks of structural imbalances, so we're always keeping that in mind. Before I go on to my next subject, is there anybody that wants to add anything to that or has any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I think it's an excellent report, and I think you did a great job of capsulizing the number of entries on this spreadsheet. I'm just wondering if you could condense this and put this into a overhead or something to present it to town meeting members. I think it's important for the Finance Committee to know these numbers and these percentages, but I also think town meeting members could also benefit from seeing something like this. My guess is, and it's just a guess, they're probably not aware of the percentages and the increases. And again, I think it would have to be a condensed version, but I think it might be helpful to that group as well.
I think that's a very fair point, and Paul and I can talk about something that would be a little easier to digest to a larger group. Leanne, if you're there, if you could put that on our to-do items. Okay.
I will.
Thank you, Leanne. Okay. So that's what I've got on long-term budget trends for everyone to think about. Next item I'd like to go to is the discussion of the tax rates. So everyone knows, and that's also in the packet, it's another Excel chart that Paul also worked with me on. It's 2 pages if everyone has it. So everyone knows that we have a dual tax rate in this town, and that commercial generally pays a higher dollar rate, but how does this actually work? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. So if you look at the first page of this chart, you'll see a tax levy amount up in the top in the middle of the page, $80,727,915. You'll see that. Then if you go down in the box, under totals, valuation, you'll see there's a total valuation of $5.2 billion, specifically $5,294,353,855. You take that division and you multiply that by 1,000, and that becomes the tax rate, which is referred to as the single rate for the town, which in this case combines to 15.25. Okay, so that's the first data point. Carly's over there checking the math on me.
That's how my brain works.
See anything off, let us know. Okay.
That's how my brain works.
So 15.25 is the single rate. That's the first number that we start with. Now, the select board has the authority for establishing the factor, the so-called factor for commercial and industrial. And you will see, the number's a little small, but you will see in the middle of the page where it says single rate, you see that 15.25 in the first column that we just calculated. You will see a factor of 1.58%, which is calculated for commercial and industrial. So what do we do with that number? Well, we take the 15.25 that we just started with, that's our first data point. We multiply that by 1.58, because we're basically dealing with over 100%, 1.58, effectively 1.5%. So times 1.58 equals 24.09. Now that second data point we just hit, so the 15.25 times the factor, which for this past year is 1.58, gives you 24.09. That is the tax rate per thousand that is then assigned to commercial, industrial, and personal, which I assume is excise taxes. You'll see those with the number 2 circled inside the box. So then what happens? So then the valuations for commercial, industrial, and personal, you'll see those in that third column, valuation multiplied by that 24.09 gives you the levy for each of those 3 categories. So you see there's about 11 million for the commercial category, 6.9 million or so for industrial, 4.6 million for personal. So now we have a grand total levy of the 80,727,000 that we previously talked about. We're now going to subtract the numbers that we've just established for commercial, industrial, and personal. And that leaves us with the residual, which is for residential. That is the 57 million also in the box. So you see levy by class under residential. That's the number that's left over. So in residential, you now have the 57,590,757. You divide that into the residential valuation, which is the 4 billion number, 2 columns over, 4,333 billion, and that is what gives you the residential rate. So now we've established the commercial, industrial, and personal rates of 24.09, and we've established the residential rate of 13.29. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, other than I think it's good for people to understand how we're actually raising the money in this town, is also to appreciate that the valuations for residential properties over the past 6 years has been growing at a faster rate than the valuations for commercial. And in particular, if you go down to the second half of the page, average valuation for single family, let's take fiscal year 2018 as our benchmark, 305,000. Fiscal year 2024 for that same item, so that's 1, 2, 3, but 6 years later, is 484,000. Now, Al would call this Portuguese math, but I'm not Portuguese, so I'll just say it's my math. My math tells me that's about a 60% increase over that 6-year period in valuation Okay, so just put a pin in that number, a 60% increase in residential valuation over the last 6 years. Now, we look comparatively at the commercial valuations, 4 lines down. In 2018, commercial valuation is $815,000. And in fiscal year '24, it's $1,073,000. That is probably closer to a 25% increase as opposed to the 60% increase or so in residential. So the impact you can ultimately see in the line item called tax bill. So if you go one line down in each case, the residential tax bill in 2018, the average was $5,055. The residential tax bill in 2024 is $6,435. I would say that's about a 28% increase over the 6 years for residential. Then we slide down to the commercial. It was $25,332 in fiscal year 2018. Fiscal year 2024, it's $25,874. That's probably an increase of about 2 or 3% or so. And you can see the changes, the percentage changes each year. As a matter of fact, this year you can see the commercial tax bill actually went down 7%, and the residential tax rate on average went up 5.83%. So now there's a second page, and if we're going to have this data anywhere, Paul, yes.
Can I just make one comment?
Sure, go ahead.
So that's why some people's tax bills go up more than the 2.5%. Because somebody might say, oh, how come my bill went up 3 or 4% or whatever it was? And so that shift is part of the reason behind that.
Thank you for that, Paul.
Andy, I was actually going to mention the same point, but just to elaborate on that further. For instance, if in that scenario where the assessed values of the residential is exceeding or growing much faster than commercial, you could have the exact same levy to get 2.5%, have the exact same levy and your tax bill still goes up.
So the 2.5% is really just protecting the global number,
The cap.
not the individual.
The 80 million number
Yes.
can only grow by the 2.5.
Yes. Now, there's a second page in this chart, and we're going to publish these documents anyway. I would say let's not publish the second page because it's merely a hypothetical. But we looked at, if you didn't have a factor of 1.58 in this example, if you had a factor of 1.725, and I understand there are some limitations on how much the factor can be adjusted each year, but just to give people an idea of how that might change numbers, in this example, if you use the 1.725 factor, it would bring the residential bill from $6,435 to $6,198. It's a $240 reduction. And the the commercial average bill would go from $25,874 to $28,249. Now, obviously, there's a lot of different variations you can create here, so that's just one for illustrative purposes. So I know this is a little bit complicated, but this is how we raise our money. So I thought it was a useful exercise for people to understand how the calculations are being done, how it's affecting residential and commercial, and what all the various other factors are. Now,
I like this, but I think we're missing one piece. I don't know if it was a decade or 2 decades ago, Paul Abadanza did a calculation that said for every dollar we collect in residential, it costs us, back then was $1.80 in services. For every commercial dollar it was 18 cents, and for every industrial dollar it was 14 cents. Knowing those numbers puts this into perspective. Because if you think about it, commercial does not have kids. So that's 60% of an expense that they don't benefit from. But I'd love to know now, a decade or 2 decades later, what the spread is.
It hasn't changed much.
Okay.
So
it's still $1.80.
It's still a huge differential.
Because when people see new houses being put in or developments, everybody gets excited that you're getting $6,200 average. But each house comes normally with 2 kids. And at $12,000 each, or $15,000 each, it doesn't cover.
Right. Yeah, I assume in terms of what puts the most pressure on the budget, commercial would be on the lower rung, the single families, and then concentrated apartments, I assume, would put the most pressure because you got a more number of children in the schools per square foot or what have you.
Well, it's trash, because
Yeah.
commercial pays for its own trash. It's fire, because they really don't use fire, because most of 60-70% of fire is paramedics. So it's a lot of services that commercial and industrial don't pay, but people should understand the effect they have. And when you say it goes up or down, when commercial or industrial goes down, remember you got that 50% premium, so it's like a double whammy to homeowners. Because the 80 million stays the same. If you reduce commercial, you're not reducing $6,400 per establishment, you're reducing more like $9,000.
Oh, you mean because the rate is higher for the commercial?
Right, because you got 1.5 rate.
Right. And it's a smaller percentage of the total levy than residential. So it's not a dollar for dollar.
No, it's not even.
It's not a dollar for dollar flip. But all of those observations would apply equally to the fiscal year 2018 numbers.
Good question, Mr. Chairman. So I think this was a great conversation and a great way to lay this out. The thing that I take all your points. The other thing that I think from this when I step back, and we were just going a second ago, is that idea of like, hey, the total levy, roughly 60 million is residential of the 80, so that's about 75%, sort of round numbers. And you're saying to yourself, how do we get, to me, it's like, how do we make commercial industrial more attractive? Because you want that mix to go up.
Yep.
You really want that mix to go up of your valuation, right? So if that valuation doubles, that has a huge impact on the way this math works. In the rate setting, and I know this isn't, we don't do the rate setting, but in the rate setting, in your exploration of this, is there anything you could share about how we think about attractiveness and competitiveness? I mean, we're right on 495, we're right near the Pike, we're a pretty good location for, industry and business, right? I mean, because you can get to a lot of highways very quickly. But it's still, of our valuation, it's still pretty small. As we think to set those rates, how do we go about being competitive and trying to attract as much of this as we can?
Well, you're on the 20-year plan committee.
They have not talked about that. Early innings there. But I wasn't sure in the rate setting process if that was, or is it like, hey, look, this is kind of working for us.
Yeah, no,
Kind of leave it the way it is.
You're going to a broader question of competitiveness and vacancy rates and all those sorts of things. Paul, did you want to say something?
Yeah, so about, 20 years ago, or however long ago it was, they did do a dual tax rate study, and some of the members on this committee were here when that was done. And the determination from that study was the tax rate was like way further down on the list and not a consideration for major companies moving into the area. It might have a greater effect on small, little local businesses, but on the bigger draws, it's one of, it's like in the top 10 things, but not in the top 5. And that probably hasn't changed much. There are other communities that have dual tax rates, and it's not that out of line with what other communities that are subsidizing their residential rate with commercial.
That makes sense to me because, I'm looking at these commercial numbers, 25,000, because that's an average. It's probably not a median, right? I mean, because comparing Target to...
That's for $1 million building.
That's for $1 million building. So, I mean, comparing Target's bill to the pizza shop, right, is just...
Yeah, but proportionally, it's going to be the same.
Waters is a huge number.
Exactly.
And the tax bill to them, I understand, is not even on their radar screen. So,
Can you just explain how you got the factor, how that number's derived, the 1.58? How does
Select
that?
board.
That's
Oh, it's an arbitrary number?
Is it?
That's the current shift.
But it's an arbitrary just number?
Within a
Is it-
range.
is it no calc-
Within a range, as I understand.
Is there no calculation involved?
So
There is a calculation
if we
involved.
look at the year, the current fiscal year that has the actual numbers on it, you'll see at one point it was In 2015, it was 1.48, 1.48, 1.53, 1.58, the last.
That's the very top number on the lower half of the page.
Yeah, but
How
it
do you get to
shows
that
what
number?
the rate is, what it says for the average bill at the shift at the bottom. So in this area here,
I'm just,
David, it is set by the selectmen. There's no fast and hard number that says, add this plus that, divide this plus that. Each town has a range that they can set.
so just the continuation of that thought, the second page was used, that 1.72 number would be a number that was used to have the increase of residential and the increase in commercial be approximately the same.
so they just range it and they look at, use it as a management tool to see
Maybe they do, maybe they don't.
how it affects residential versus commercial.
Mr. Chairman, so the Board of Assessors come in and present this to the selectmen too, and they provide options, and they've just gone with the same option the past.
That was my understanding, yeah. You good? Okay. Good. Anything else? All right, so
Nice job.
hopefully that was useful.
Very, thank you.
Was useful.
I like the math.
Okay. I think this was touched upon in the capital meeting, but Rick or Zach, one of you guys want to come up and talk about the protocol issue? So for anyone who was not in the capital meeting, there was an issue with the Pheno pool renovation. As I understand it, it's roughly a $5 million project, and there was about $170,000, give or take, of overages that were committed but not appropriated. So the town was in a spot where we were obligated beyond the amounts that were authorized by town meeting, which is, obviously something we shouldn't be doing. And so, as I said, I know this was touched upon in the capital meeting, but I think it's probably appropriate in the context of the broader Finance Committee meeting to talk about this in a couple of contexts. One is, do we have a protocol going forward to ensure that expenditure authorizations do not exceed caps before we commit to the project? And then the second issue is really an operational issue, is there some mechanism in place to make sure that whoever is sponsoring a bill has the capacity to oversee the project, or that if they do not, that appropriate outside individuals are brought in to make sure that, because we may stay within budget and then find out later on, well, they forgot to do X or Y, and then effectively that's going to backdoor us into an overage problem, right? So we really should be looking at both issues. So I'm looking to you two guys to address that for us if you can.
The first issue, just by way of background, when we do a project, so if the select board is doing a project, I am going to get quotes, estimates, bids. Depending on the cost of the project, we'll either get 3 quotes. If it's over $50,000, we'll do a formal bid process. Once either of those processes is completed, we will select a vendor. At that point, town council prepares a contract. That contract is reviewed by town council, drafted. Once it is in final form, it is reviewed by me as town administrator, me as the procurement officer, and if the select board is sponsoring it, me as the department head. So if it's parks, it would be the parks director, highway, it would be Scotty, etc. So we would all sign that contract. Zach would sign the contract, and when he signs that contract, there's a place on that contract for the amount of the appropriation and the account number he has set it up under. And then town council finishes it as to form, the vendor signs, we have a contract. The project begins. So all that was done with the park contract that you referred to just now. What happened at that point is, again, there was as I understand it, a change order. That's where the process fell apart. So what we have done, Zach and I have met, we've discussed it. We had a department head meeting yesterday with all of the relevant department heads at the meeting. So that initial process that we use with town council and the contract is now we're going to back that up. And if there is a change order, if there is an amendment to the contract, because sometimes there's an amendment to the contract that just might change the scope, but not the price. It may decrease the price. But any of those situations, we're going to follow that same process again. First, they will have to come to Zach. Do we have the money for the change order? If it's an increase, for example, they will have to be reviewed by town council. Legally, is the change order or the amendment legally accurate and correct? And finally, it will be reviewed by me, because when you do certain change orders, there's a range. You can't do a change order on a $100,000 contract for another $100,000. So there is, and I'm being a little bit facetious with the comment. So we're going to add that layer. Each department head was notified yesterday, and there'll be a memo going out also, that that is the new process. The other thing we want to ensure, and I think most, if not all, boards and committees do that, is if there is a contract, it must be voted on by their board or committee or commission. If there is a change order, they should be getting that, again, voted on by their board or committee. And I'm not sure that was done in this case. So you'll have Zach looking at it again, me looking at it again, Brian looking at it again, the department head should be looking at it again, and the board, commission, whatever it is, or I guess in Scotty's case, the elected official will be looking at it again. So we're going to implement, that will be a requirement, it'll be across the board. Everybody's agreed that we will do it that way. Is it 100% going to work? I probably, nothing's 100%, I believe. But in this case, I think it was very much reinforced yesterday by myself, by Zach, that we will follow that process now.
This actually came up in the meeting we had before, and to Rick's point, will this be 100%? We're not going to sit here and put our endorsement on that.
I'll never make that accurate statement, that statement.
In those cases, the change order already occurred, then it came to me when the bill came. I'm looking at the bill, like, I can't pay this. So we didn't actually pay it, our process worked from there.
Process worked from his standpoint in catching it.
Can I ask you a question? Just because I know how change orders work, the owner usually signs the change order for it to go forward and to approve it. I guess I can't look backwards. I guess I'd like to ask, like, who signed this change order? Who approved it?
The architect.
Yeah, but the architect isn't the owner. The town of Milford's the
You
owner.
understand, it broke down.
Okay.
That's where the breakdown was, David.
That makes no sense.
That was the breakdown in this particular case,
Well, that's sort
as
of,
I understand it.
that sort of overlaps to my second question, right? About
Yes, I'm glad you said that.
operational authority. Did you want to transition to that, or is there more you wanted to say about the payment aspect?
Unless anybody has a question, I don't have anything more on the payment aspect, unless Zach does.
Rick, I tried to flow chart out the process and then
Yeah.
the change or the revision that you
Yeah.
presented. And I didn't see any communication or link to the Finance Committee, Capital Planning Committee. Is there any way we can fold them into the process? Because, I mean, they're involved in this thing from the get-go. They look at the budget. We have a fixed amount for capital items each year. And to this point, it doesn't look like,
I mean, I scream from the rooftops that department heads, keep your subcommittee chair informed, and vice versa. I mean, you guys should be checking in on your respective departments as well.
Yeah.
But as far as actually signing a contract, I'm not sure we need.
oh, no, I didn't mean that, no.
No, but to your point, I think I know where you're going.
Yeah,
If,
some type of communication to the
Yeah.
capital.
if the appropriation is $500,000, and that's the original
And it's
contract,
budgeted for
and he
that.
signed off on it, and we've spent $410, and the change order is 30,
Yeah.
we're okay there. The problem becomes when it exceeds. Now, at that point, we've emphasized, yeah, they should come to the subcommittee, the capital subcommittee, and say, look, we have an appropriation for 500, however, now we're in this boat. He's going to deny, he's going to say, no, you can't do it. And that process starts, and now what do we do? Do we
But I even
change
say-
scope? What do we do?
The example I think you gave where it's 400, there's 500 available, we got a $30,000 change order, they should, is it all legal to move forward? Yes, but out of respect, should a subcommittee?
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
You guys should know that
Yes.
the original project is now being changed.
Particularly his
altered.
committee.
So I agree with Bob, and then also, don't you have the issue of if it's more than the appropriated amount, do you need to go back to town meeting, or is there?
We have to, yeah.
Yeah, so you got a bigger problem. You can't just take it from some other.
No.
Loose end.
We were very fortunate. We had this ARPA money still hanging around. It's gone. That's it. No more.
Yeah,
It's gone.
and that point was made clear also.
Yeah, so that was made very clear.
But anyway, I think we were transitioning to the operational
I
question.
think Al had a question.
One thing to make clear, in this case, there was no malfeasance.
Yeah, no.
Oh, there's no question of that, Al. No question of
In
that.
my mind, it was on-the-job training
Yeah.
that the person who was in charge didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
Because they should have done like Scotty did. Got a bid to do Water Street for 1.7 million, or an estimate. When the bids came in, it was 2.9 million. Come back
Yeah.
and say, I don't have enough money. So we turn around and go back to town meeting and say, right, wrong, or indifferent, we got an estimate of 1.7. It's now 3 bids at 2.9. We need more money. That's what should have happened. It didn't.
I just got to add to that, I'm just surprised the contractor accepted that change order without our signature on it.
So, Todd, you had said something earlier that, oh, we got to pay this bill, technically speaking. I
You don't
think
have
we
to.
needed to, but.
You don't have to, 'cause we-
Bad form,
technically
I
that's
didn't
not-
want,
yeah.
I wasn't
Yeah,
endorsing
I don't want to
that.
get a reputation that the town of Milford doesn't pay its bills.
But yes.
Well, I assume they take the position the architect is an agent of the town, and then you're in the middle of a lawsuit.
Well, then you're,
Exactly,
and that's a
exactly,
whole other
exactly.
discussion.
But
we don't
technically speaking,
need
we
to
would have
have.
won that. We would have won that.
Yeah, but
Legally speaking.
realistically,
Legally
the contractor did the work in good faith.
Yeah.
We got
Shouldn't have.
There's no way I want to be able
Yeah.
to use that as a defense and say, we're not going to pay. Correct.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Vin.
Since the work was done without money being in the piggy bank to pay them, is the town subject to, and I don't know if the state has any anti-deficiency laws, whereas you're having work done, but you don't have the money to pay for it? Is there any restrictions on that? Any penalties the town may face for having work done without having the money to pay for it?
To my knowledge.
Not that I'm aware of, and again, we didn't make the payment, so that might have.
And then I heard
If
ARPA
we'd done
money.
that might have been an issue. No, but I'm saying absent the ARPA money.
Oh,
Yeah, but
absent. Because ARPA money is
realistically-
federal money, and then there is the ADA guidelines on that, what causes punishment to
ARPA
be.
money that we had left dropped into, you can.
Yeah, we're legit with the opera.
Yeah, that dropped into a general
No,
fund.
but realistically,
Selectmen can approve.
am I not correct in saying you're not allowed to spend money that wasn't approved?
Yes,
Correct.
100%.
I mean, you're breaking the law.
Well, that's what I'm
The law
saying.
says you need to
100%, yes.
get, we can't go to
I'm
bid.
minimizing that at all.
We can't go to bid
100%.
till town meeting approves money.
Yes, and then it's
So-
incumbent upon me, when we have an issue, to notify the selectmen, as I did when I learned, and continuously until we have a solution. Fortunately, we had a solution with ARPA.
But it doesn't solve the problem that we committed funds that didn't exist.
Yes.
We broke the law.
Yes.
That's the
not
ADA.
arguing.
Plain and simple.
Yes, yes.
Now, it wasn't for any malfeasance. It
No,
wasn't like-
this was a significant project. There was another significant, they had 2 significant projects going on. So there was no intent, no willful
Right.
conduct. I mean, please don't, and you all know that.
But we have to take the steps to say, Zach, I love you to death, but you're the catch, you're the safety net. By the time it gets to you, it's too late.
Late.
So what you're doing, I applaud you to say, get ahead of it and make sure people understand. If you got $100 allocated, the minute you think you're going to go over the 100 before you commit it, you got to come back.
Yeah?
Just a follow-up question on that, as you're describing, Al, I understand exactly where you're going, around people have to know where they are in committing above what's been appropriated. But if you've got a bid that, or a project that has one contractor on the whole thing and one contract, one bid, it's very simple, right? And you've signed a
Much
contract.
easier. That was not this case.
That was not
What I'm
this
about to
case.
ask, if
No
you've got one
question.
that's got a bunch of contractors and.
Wasn't an architect and miscellaneous.
So let's say a project with
Yeah.
several pieces and several different agreements. Who helps them keep track of all the different pieces? Because you might estimate 10 pieces that come in certain ways and they'll come in differently. They could, without some help, they might
Well,
not get it right.
Something of this nature would qualify for a capital project. It's its own fund, it has its own balance sheet, has its own income statement. I put it together, we distribute them monthly, we review them at times. With this park project, the pool, all, like, the majority of it, the huge heavy lifting, all occurred in basically like a 1 month period. Everything we're talking went from good to not good in about a 1 month period. Those things got approved, they didn't filter into my office. When the bill came in, hey, this doesn't reconcile, what's going on?
Yeah.
Oh, we got some change orders. Well, where are they? You know, so that's in a nutshell what happened. But we put out reconciliation, and I fully expect the department that has the authority to spend to have their own reconciliation. They should be reconciling to me.
We've
you know?
stressed that those reports should be reviewed. Each project report should be reviewed. They should be able to see, here's what we started with, here's where we are now, and here's where the money's gone. So we've also stressing that. There are certain projects that we should be looking at all our projects. Shame on us if we're not. So that has been stressed also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought part of the help, and what you're bringing up is a good point, is a clerk of the works.
That's what we're going to talk about.
That's where I'm going to go next. I think
But I'm
that's
saying
where
for a
Randy-
$2 million project, there was no clerk of the works?
For the record, the person that we're talking about requested it 4 or 5 times and was denied through the
Yeah.
process. So
Denied by who?
I'm not sure exactly. I
Okay.
think financing was a piece too. So
Yeah.
we all got to look.
But-
What we will stress also a little bit now, in certain projects that are 1.5 million, I think that's the number and over, certain building projects, there's a requirement for what they call an OPM.
So, hold on, so let me stop you there. That 1.5 million, is that a new criteria that we've established? or-
No. That's
What is that
Chapter 30B.
Okay.
The statute.
If the- if it's
The number
more-
might be higher. I was looking at one of my old books this morning. I gotta
If it's more than that number, what?
But if it is a building project, this project did not qualify for that. But if it is that, there is a requirement. You need an OPM. When we do the Milford High School, obviously, we're going, Al's on that
And
committee.
the acronym OPM for everyone's benefit is?
Owner's Project Manager.
Okay, thank
Okay, sorry. So one of the things we might want to consider, even though this project didn't require an OPM, the sheer volume of the size of the project, number one, and the cost of the project, I'm going to recommend that we at least see what the cost would be. Doesn't mean we can't get one. And then when that person, whether it's me or whoever it is, comes in front of you and the select board and others of their own commissions and boards, we can say, okay, here's the cost of the project. Do we want to hire an OPM?
Yes.
And if we're going to hire an OPM,
Here's the cost.
here's the
Here's the
additional
cost,
cost.
yes.
So that's got to be
Yes.
weighed in.
And that didn't happen with the
My
pool.
guess on that project, and it's a guess and an estimate, it would have probably been another $100,000 for an OPM. Just so you know. So, and again, it's a guess, please don't hold it to me. But I think we now, for that size project, I'll be honest, I haven't dealt myself personally in 12 years with that kind of size project, but I think we should strongly consider at least, and it doesn't mean we have to do it, but at least get the cost, and then you can weigh it. How technical, how difficult is the project? How much expertise does the
I
department head
guarantee you it's
have?
going to come up at every capital subcommittee meeting.
I'm sorry?
I'll guarantee you that we will ask
And
that
again,
question.
you should, you should.
Because $100,000 seems like incredibly expensive, but now we're talking
not.
about.
No, maybe $4, $5, $6 million
Yeah, I
project.
mean, all of a sudden, the town park project goes from 2 million to 3 million.
And in all honesty, I mean, I've done a lot of projects. I don't have a lot of the expertise that is needed, and you know, most of us don't. So I think that has to be weighed. I put that thought in your head and your capital subcommittee heads. It might be a question you ask, given the size of the project.
Now, whether it's legally required or not,
That's irrelevant to me.
for the good of Milford,
Yeah.
I think we ought to buy that
Yeah.
insurance policy when it's practical.
Yeah. And again, you have to look at the project, you have to look at, you know, maybe Scotty has certain expertise, maybe he doesn't need it. Maybe someone like me may need it. Just,
Okay.
I have one question.
Finn, go ahead.
Along the line of what Al just said, insurance, does the town require performance bonds?
Yes.
absolutely.
Okay.
Our
For the full-
contracts are written with,
For the full amount of the contract award?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, that's what they should be.
All right.
Sometimes
And-
higher, depending on the nature of the project.
Construction projects, you know, that are pretty intricate, of long duration, you should require performance schedules, or progress schedules, and schedule of values. so that you know if a bill is coming in, you have to know exactly what is being requested to be paid for?
Yep.
And is it the value that is shown on the schedule of values?
So that all does occur. As I mentioned, everything happened in about, we're literally talking a 4-week period.
Very
So
small window.
4 weeks
Yeah.
here, look good, everything reconciled, exactly what you're saying. 4 weeks later, next one,
Yes.
there's a difference here. Where are these change orders? So
And in case the contractor defaults or comes up short in any manner, you have the
Need to be able to
performance
complete the
bond.
project, correct.
We do retainage as well, just
Yeah.
as an added.
But the clerk of the work for any big project is really mandatory for protection of the town. You know, 100,000, might be less, might be more.
I'm guessing, but I think
Yeah, I
that's
understand.
fairly accurate.
But I think the money spent for that individual is worth it, because you get an extra layer of protection to look at the progress schedule, the schedule of values,
Speaking
the
of-
money that the town's paying out.
Department head who does project, it's a little area of comfort for me, to be quite honest with you. You have someone you can go to.
Okay, well,
Thank you.
thank you guys for that. There's nothing further, I'll go on to the next agenda item. So I think you're
Yeah,
all
it's
set,
up
right?
in now.
I'm going to step out.
Yes.
Update quick.
So this is, we're going down to update of finance director, because we won't need Zach for the balance. Go ahead,
Excuse me.
Zach.
All right, so we know we closed out fiscal '24. I wanted to go over the results a little bit. I've been working my tail off to get prepared to submit the combined balance sheet to the Department of Revenue and get free cash certified. Normally, free cash is not certified until the first week of October. I may not be here first week of October as my third child will be born, so that's why I've been trying to go very quick. I actually met with them today. I'm comfortable releasing the number, even though it's not certified, because we went over it, everything looks good. And then I want to give some background to that. I'll go over in a lot more detail at a future meeting, what derived free cash, but I can at this time kind of give high-level categories, if you will. So I'm actually going to go through those categories. You can kind of maybe mentally start adding up what this number is going to be. So number of exercises we look at is local receipts. Was it higher than what we budgeted or lower? And you know we're quite conservative with our estimates, and there's a number of sources of funding that we just cannot estimate on, such as tax liens and foreclosures and whatnot. So we had a pretty good revenue year, 2.5 million over, additional 2.5. A lot of it had come from Chris Pilla having a really good earnings year. A lot of it was in earnings, motor vehicle excise. Oh, and that reminded me, you had mentioned personal property and excise. It's not. There's two different things. Personal property is going to be like these guys. Excise is your motor vehicles.
Okay.
All right. Desks, chairs, stuff like that.
That's the personal property that
Machinery.
businesses are using of the commercial industrial.
Machinery,
Okay.
you know, stuff like that. Yeah. So 2.5 in additional local receipts than budgeted. That's good. Same exercise with state aid. We get 210,000 more than what was on the cherry sheet. Also good. It's a large number. Unencumbered, unexpended appropriations, 5 million. 2.5 of which, you may recall, was closeout of articles at the last town meeting.
Yeah.
You may tell yourself, why is that so high? You may remember the modular classrooms was the vast majority of that number. So take that out, take other encumbrances out, we're talking about $2 million in fiscal '24 operational budget. About $1 million in free cash that we did not use last year, so that remained in the undesignated fund balance. Then we have this exercise of change in receivables, about $670,000 negative. And then we have this exercise, final calculation is change in deficit accounts. There are many, we have about 400 funds on the books. A lot of them can be deficit and are because they're reimbursable grants, right? So I have this clearing process that I do, but part of this measurement is what were your deficits last year? What's the deficits this year? That was $102,000 to the positive. Altogether, 7.5 million. That is our free cash number leading into this October town meeting.
Thank you for that breakdown, Zach.
And I will, at the next meeting, I'll have it more detailed for which budget's here, there, et cetera. That's the breakdown there. Now, I want to quickly tie that to where we left off at the annual town meeting. And I apologize for not having handouts, feeling a little under the weather. I didn't want to have it all sick and whatnot, but.
Can you guys just email it to us at some point after the
Yeah.
meeting? Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
So I'm going to go right to the bottom line. We know that this, at the Maytown meeting, we were dipping into our excess levy capacity, right? Our target from the previous year was 5.7. We did a number of capital articles we don't typically do at the May meeting, which caused us to eat up our raise and appropriate earmark, if you will, for capital. So that occurred. So right now, if we were to set the tax recap, right now, forgetting what I said with free cash, we would have a number of 4.3, call it $4.4 million of excess levy. So that's a decent dip from where we want it to be of 5.7, all right? So what can we do with free cash? And we'll have this conversation all throughout as we lead up. But can we get back to that target? Yes, we can. If we would like to set as a goal to return back to the target of excess levy of 5.7, we can do that by giving some of this money back to the taxpayers. And I, at this time, would definitely entertain that, but we're going to have this discussion at the chairmanship meeting on next Wednesday, and we'll bring it forward to the full committee, and we'll have a lot deeper of a conversation about it. But that's where we're at right now. I think it's a good thing. I think we can do a lot of hitting of targets like we mentioned, and we can see what we have available at this special town meeting for articles. I know you have that as a placeholder on the agenda. It's still open now. There has not been a heck of a lot. I think Rick will tell you that not many articles have been put in right now.
What's the deadline for submission of articles?
I'm sorry?
What's the
There's no
deadline?
real deadline, but I'm expecting to have everything by the end of next week,
Okay.
and the warrant done shortly thereafter.
We're not going to have stuff coming to us at the beginning of October, hopefully.
I'm hoping the select board will approve on September 30th, and so you'd have it October 1st. Right now, there are not many articles, maybe 12 to 15. However, I do know, in talking, we had a department head meeting yesterday, in talking with a number of the department heads, there are additional articles coming.
We don't expect it to be like last year's 45, though. It doesn't-
No.
It does not seem
Unless
even
something
close to that.
really
Yeah.
changes in the next few days.
Okay, so I'm going to just say as a preliminary matter that we'll have 2 or 3 meetings between now and the special town meeting where we can talk in more detail about the spending articles that are before us and allocation of funds. So I don't think we need to get into that tonight. Are there any general questions that people want to ask Zach as to what he's presented, at least for tonight's purposes?
But keep in mind that, was it 10 days before town meeting, the report has to go out? So it seems like we got a lot of time, but if we're not going to get the warrant closed from Rick till October 1st, we've got till October 10th to mail out, which means Dr. Abodabo needs it October 8th. That only leaves you 8 days to have all those meetings.
We might have to do back-to-back nights. Although, I mean, if we do end up with 15 to 20, you guys have been busy with capital.
Worst case, though, you can do a special mailing.
If we have to, we'll do a special mailing. I mean, the Finance Committee technically doesn't have to go with the general report. Right?
Right.
So, I mean, I don't want to have to do that, but I also don't want to have unnecessary fire drills.
There
So,
are some that are non-monetary
okay.
that
So we're going
not
to, we should be wrapping this up by October 10th?
I would hope that,
The next meeting is October 11th.
if we're going to have Wednesday meetings, and we're kind of jumping a little bit ahead right now, but I talked to Rick briefly. I think we conclude the next meeting would probably be September 25th, and hopefully we'd have a few articles then. So we'd probably want to pencil in September 25th, October 2nd, and October 9th. Will we need 3 meetings? Will we need 2 meetings? Not clear. October 9th, everything would have to be done, because then you're, 12 12, 13 days from special town meeting.
September 25th is under consideration.
September 25th is under consideration.
It's a Wednesday, right?
Yes, these are all Wednesdays. Rick has cleared all those Wednesdays that I just
October
mentioned.
2nd?
October 2nd and October 9th. Those are the 3 dates we've put in pencil because this room is available all of those nights. Hopefully, we wouldn't need every one of those. We're definitely not going to do anything next Wednesday.
You just need a pencil on it.
Yes, okay. Anything else, Zach?
No, sir.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so now I've got 4 things left on the agenda. Now that we let Zach go, let's revert back to approval of the minutes. That was in the package that I had circulated a week or 2 ago. Questions or comments on the minutes, or is there a motion? Yes, sir.
Comment. I have to abstain, but I also want to, I read in the minutes that Chris Moran resigned from the committee.
He did.
And I just want to thank him for his service while he was here and graciously welcomed me when I came on the committee. So I just wanted to say that. And if he's watching, thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Anything else?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, that's a motion for Leanne's benefit by Mike Nicholson to approve the minutes, and it's seconded by Vin. Okay, roll call. Lauren? That looks like a yes.
That was a yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. A hand wave is sufficient. Chuck?
Yes.
Thank you. Carly?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Fran?
Yes.
Vin?
Yes. Yes.
Abstain.
Okay, so it's unanimous with 1 abstention by David Levine. That was a motion by Mike Nicholson and a second by Vincent. Okay, so that takes care of minutes. The next thing I'd like to do is subcommittee assignments / modifications. That is in the package. Okay. Let me explain what I am doing here and why I am doing it. If people have issues, we can discuss it, vote on it, but I'll tell you why I think this makes sense. We have 16 committees here. I have cut it down to about 5 that I would call committees at this point. Now, what is a committee for these purposes? A committee is a group that's dealing with an issue that's too big to be dealt with by one individual. And 2 perfect examples of that is capital and schools. Countryside is a longstanding existing committee, so I left that alone. And if there were any other circumstances where more than one person wanted to be on a committee, I formed a 3-person committee on that. As to the balance, what I am recommending is that we have what I would refer to as a point person for all of these various departments, and an alternate. And the alternate can be a backup, that can be somebody who can help review data, can jump in if you're not available, but have one person. And why am I doing this? Well, there's multiple reasons. Number 1, if you have a subcommittee, you need to post meetings. Number 2, you need to keep minutes. Number 3, you need to coordinate everyone's schedules. Number 4, we've had people on a half a dozen subcommittees and they're not participating on half of them because they're overwhelmed. What I'm suggesting here is that we reduce the scope of responsibility for people, but I would like people to do the things that they're actually being asked to do here. Now, if people think there's a lot on their plate on a particular committee, again, there's an alternate there to help. People can call me if there are questions, or Al, or whatever, if you need somebody to help jump in and assist. But I'm trying to simplify everybody's lives because we have enough procedural weight on us as to the broader committee. I'm trying to reduce that weight on the subcommittee level. And I know a lot of people are sort of pressed for time, trying to figure out what is it that's essential here, what needs to be done, and what's the easiest way to do it. If it's a single person, you can pick up the phone with the department head, you can have a quick phone call, they can email you budgets, you can dispense with a lot of the the burdens of the minutes, and I know we've had issues with subcommittees not completing minutes all the time, and, I've been a villain on that as well. It's just another burden that people forget about. So anyway, that is what I did. As far as the selection of departments, there's a combination of what people requested, what people have done in the past. If people want to make trades with people or particular issues, you can speak with someone else you might want to trade with or talk to me or whatever, but that's what I've tried to accomplish. Okay, so that's my explanation, discussion.
Chairman, I think it's a good idea. I think you're exactly right. In my experience, big subcommittees, it's hard to get people to join because people are busy with jobs and life, and there's the subcommittee. I think sometimes the conversations we're having in some of the smaller subcommittees, and you're looking at them and you're saying it ends up being much more of like a personal conversation, and there's not decisions really being made. Decisions come to the finance committee by the time it gets to that point, and you're really just helping somebody through the process, and I don't think you need to have an army show up. So I think I like what you're doing with a hybrid approach, because there's some places where you do need a committee, where there are complicated issues, and there's other places where I think it can be more of a conversation. We could debate if there's one that somebody says, no, I really want to have a whole gathering, but by and large, I like what you're doing.
Okay, thanks, Brent.
I think it's great.
Okay, thank you, Jerry.
It really simplifies the process, gets some point person, and I like the idea of having a backup, because if I can't do it, I'm going to call Brent and tell him to do it. But I really like, and the only thing that I see is I need to keep my backup informed.
Yeah, that's obviously helps you and it helps them.
Right, and then, so no, I'm kind of excited to see how this is going to work, because it looks like it might help streamline the whole process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, point of order question, and I'm looking at the Education Subcommittee, which would require minutes, but my question is if the committee is meeting with the school committee and they generate minutes religiously, do we have to also create minutes for that same meeting, or does the school committee's minutes suffice?
Well, and this sounds like a Rick question, but I think the answer is if it's a school committee meeting that you're attending, then you can sort of piggyback on their minutes. If you're calling this an official finance committee, school committee meeting, then you're sort of putting yourself in the procedural process of having minutes.
Do I have to?
So just get yourself invited to.
Set it up yourself, Mike.
Do I need to say more, Mike?
Do I post the agenda or not?
That's what I was going to say. Realistically, what we've been going through in the past is he or she who posts the agenda is responsible for the minutes. So if the school committee has every other Thursday meeting, they're posting an agenda, they're doing the minutes, you're just attending. If you call a special meeting, like when we invite the school committee to come to the capital subcommittee, I'm calling the meeting, my responsibility to do the meeting.
So, for example, the January budget meeting, a Saturday morning meeting, they would still post that as their meeting. We would be participating in it, not just as an invitee, but as a participant.
So they would be on their agenda.
Yes.
So that would cover them, right?
Yes.
Good.
All right.
He who posts the agenda is their meeting.
Like you
I
said,
can work on that.
get yourself invited.
Just so there's no duplication based on what we heard today, right? So the park project, who would that fall under as far as like overseeing it? Would it be the capital or would it be the public works committees?
Parks, well,
Because
a Parks project is those are capital,
Is it
right?
so that would fall under the capital
If
subcommittee?
it's an operational budget concern,
Yeah.
it falls under whatever specialty that is.
All right.
Go ahead, Al.
It starts as capital. So capital is going to approve the budget, make a recommendation. The operational part then transitions to the subcommittee.
So, okay. Because I think that it would be good to have, current numbers for that project to see where we're going.
But that should come under the operational.
That's my question. That comes to the operational side of
Yeah,
it.
if you've got Parks Department, when you do your monthly meetings with
Right.
parks, you should be asking for a budget and progress on projects. That should be as part of operations.
Jerry?
My only follow-up comment to that is it's integrally important that in the case of the Parks Department, that if you're doing a capital project that's going to impact their budget, either positively or negatively, they would want to be involved in that. Because there's some things that you could do that could decrease their expense requirements if you upgrade something, okay?
When we go through the subcommittee reports, I'll bring that up because that's one of the issues that came up tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, I know people would like to wrap up soon. We got 2 items left. Subcommittee reports. Let's remember when it comes to subcommittee issues and invitation to speak, these are both general observations, open meeting law. So unless we have articulated specific topic areas, it is a monologue, it's not a dialogue, right? We can get information, you can ask whoever the speaker is to provide supporting backup or whatever it is you would like, but we're not going to engage in discussions because we've already had issues last year with people complaining about open meeting law issues on that. So in that regard, I'm going to give my little quick monologue on Countryside. For those who are not aware. They have a new administrator. I am told that they may be entitled to some additional reimbursement rights. Supposedly, they've been approved for, I don't know the details of it, but these are updates that were provided to me by Phil Ciaramicoli. Their last few months of operational performance have had losses, but the losses are lesser than they were in the past, probably in the 50 to 100,000 a month range, as opposed to the 200 to 300,000 a month range that they were running for some time. They are still hoping to get the ERC federal money, which I understand is about $1 million. They've spoken to the IRS, but I don't believe the money has been received. Over the course of the summer, I had talked to them about them issuing a request for proposal, which would be to undertake a sale effort. That effort sort of moved, didn't actually get out the door. In the last conversation I had, I was told that they're now taking this, quote, month by month, and that they have no immediate intent to undertake a sale. I told them that I personally disagreed with that approach. I thought that they were well-positioned to move forward with the sale right now. But as everyone knows here, we don't have the authority to dictate how Countryside operates. So that's the conversation that was had, and that's the latest information that I have on Countryside. Is there anybody else that wants to provide any subcommittee-related reports? Al?
2 things that we haven't covered. We discussed this evening the town park project, because originally that was estimated at $2 million to include redoing the town park, and all the details are available on the folder. To do the, I guess call it the house, or the bathroom building, and Pearl Street basketball courts. Town meeting allocated money, the grant came in, and we had $2 million to spend. Our understanding is that that's all been spent on just doing the town park facility. There's no money left for the building, and there's no money left for Pearl Street. The building was estimated at $450,000, and there's just a lot of confusion on my part as to what we're getting, because when the bids came in, it was $900,000 to have the toilets and a storage. We started getting a glimpse into extras, that all the central electricity and the plumbing and all is built into the house. But it was still $900,000 for a bathroom building with some utilities seemed excessive. Parks Department's going to rebid it, and they were hoping to get a couple $100,000 lower, but still $700,000 seemed rather excessive. We recommended to the Parks Department that they pass over an article, and we'll deal with it in the spring. That way we have time to get a lot of these questions answered. And a lot of it is not factual based. We couldn't get a good understanding as to how can the bathroom building cost $900,000?
Well, then maybe the ADA requirements, sorry.
We can't discuss it. I'm telling you what's in the...
Sorry.
According to open meeting law, I can read what's going to be in the minutes, and that's what I'm doing. So that's where we are on Town Park.
This was a discussion you guys had in the Parks meeting today?
At 5:30.
Okay.
Can
Second
I add to
thing...
what you just said?
Huh?
One clerk of the works has not been appointed in that project, and we need to make a mental note that that happens.
Okay. The second project that was talked about, there was a forum yesterday, just so everybody knows, the Post 9/11 Monument Committee. Over the last 4 years, they've been working with the Parks Department, evaluating 5 different design options, and they've come up with one that they and the Parks Department agree on. The essence of it is it would be a standalone monument on the post office side, outside the World War I big memorial. It would allow them to add 179 names, people who served from 2001 to 2021, and allow room. God forbid we should have another conflict, but we have to consider that our history says we will have another conflict someday, and our boys and girls will serve. The options ranged from, initially we were told $50,000 for the low estimate of adding names. Turns out that's closer to 100 when you include moving the granite and changing it. All the way up to what's going to be put forward is a $188,000 project to build a separate monument in front of or in front of the Draper Park and back of the World War I Memorial. Parks Department has agreed that's what they would propose. The Capital Committee, after beating it to death, feels that that's the most viable option because it takes care of 2001 to 2021 and gives room for additional names in the future. If we went with some of the other designs and just added names inside the park, we would use up all the open space. And the next conflict we have, we'd be back in the same spot. So there'll be an article for 188. I think it was 166 was the original estimate. We asked, they put a contingency in, and we've asked that they get a new bid that'll carry them out to the next year. That's my report.
Thank you, Al.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, just to acknowledge everybody, new, I guess you'd call it committee or subcommittee? I don't know. I'm the representative on the 20-year plan.
Yes.
So the comprehensive plan is underway. Our old one is fairly old and out of date. So it's really kind of led by non-financial folks, right? Because most of it's about land use and zoning and the vision for what we want this town to be. So very early innings. I think the one thing I would ask of everybody, though, is when you see communications for any of the forums they're having, take a minute and go to one of those things and give feedback and input about what your vision for the town is, because that's this process that's run by, I'm going to make sure I get the name of this group right, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. It's a very collaborative process where they're getting a lot of feedback from residents to understand what the residents want for the town to help set priorities for the future. So give your input if you get a chance.
Is that the only one? We only got 600 responses?
I don't know the latest count, but I'm sure it's a low count.
Didn't
That was a survey.
Didn't we approve it?
Jesus.
Getting a Trader Joe's.
Lobby seat.
Okay. Invitation to speak, anybody? monologue, not a dialogue.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
I wasn't actually intending to speak tonight up until the moment where the chair spoke about his preference for a moving quickly on a sale towards the countryside property. And I recognize there are some legally complicated issues that the countryside board may have the sole deciding factor on whether they choose to sell the property or not. And I hope that, in fact, town hall and people within the town with any clout will advocate for a reuse feasibility study for that parcel of land and the building before any sale talks are talked about. And that might involve persuading the board of the countryside to relinquish their right to be in charge of disposing of the property when they choose to no longer run a countryside. Because I actually think that selling I believe it's a 10-acre parcel, at the whim of the countryside board would be a disservice to the greater Milford community, and they should probably consider reverting the property to the town, who then, after studying a reuse feasibility for all different departments in town, then the sale of that property after nobody steps up and says this is a useful asset to keep as a municipal asset, then that sale could commence. But rushing to a sale before understanding the usefulness to any department in town seems short-sighted to this resident. Thank you.
Thanks, Jamie. Okay, everybody's favorite motion? Al, there's an Al Carrera motion to adjourn. A second?
Second.
Second by Vin. Second by Vin Leanne. Roll call. Lauren?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Yes. All the way.
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.